And just like that, we are live. I just realized there's a banner from last week that I need to take off, and bam, we are fixed. Good morning, Adam, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks for coming on. Really looking forward to what we're gonna, chat about today. Anybody watching live, let us know how everything sounds, and drop where you're watching from in the chat. I always love to see that. We typically have a worldwide audience. Already got from sunny Bordeaux, France. That sounds like an epic place to be watching from. Certainly better than my little slice of Florida. Elijah, good morning, buddy. Good to see you. Today, I'm really excited to have Adam on because we are going to be going over some stuff that we've dabbled in a little bit. If you recall, a few months ago, I had Taylor Drayson on and we covered some custom blocks using Block Studio. Adam uses Pinegrow to create his custom blocks, so we're going to cover that today. And also talk about full site editing. So, of course, Adam and I both attended the WordCamp US just a couple weeks ago, and full site editing was a little bit of a topic, but to be honest, when it comes to FSE, I said in my email, kind of sharing the stream yesterday, that I pretty much know that FSE is the acronym, and that's about where my knowledge lies. So really looking forward to having your help to kind of guide us through this. You want to quickly introduce yourself and let us know, a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Adam. I've got a small boutique web agency right outside of Washington, D.C. Work mostly with law firms because, Washington, D.C., you can't go 2 blocks without running into 10 different lawyers. So I do a lot of work in the legal field, professional services industries, and some of the larger nonprofits. And it's kind of funny because people hear nonprofit and they're like, oh, those guys have no money. But holy crap, around here, nonprofits have money. So definitely no shortage of business around this area.
Awesome.
I started a YouTube channel about a year ago, and I did it mostly for my client work, and it's really grown and morphed since then, though. And I've sort of become known as like the guy who does YouTube videos about Pinegrow. Because it's a tool that I use in my business. It's a tool that I'm passionate about. I think it's a great tool for people who are willing to put in the time and effort to learn it. So I just started making videos. I actually started them to help train my own people. So I work with a lot of contractors, and I wanted to do some videos on how to do certain things that we were running into problems with, sort of like a little video SOP manual. And it just kind of grew and morphed from there. And now I'm starting to make some more like intermediate level WordPress and web technology topics. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. I'm still trying to find my footing.
Oh man, I'm still trying to find my footing 175 videos later, so I feel you on that front. But yeah, also I can relate to you on the becoming known as the X guy in the WordPress YouTube space. And it's not a bad spot to be in. You can definitely open up some doors. It's really awesome. Um, I'm curious how many of you watching in the chat have either opened Pinegrow, used it, explored it, looked at it, or are we starting from the ground up? I posted a poll both on YouTube and in my Facebook group about what the interest level was in terms of how deep or surface level should we go, and it seems like about 2/3 of folks, both in regards to FSE and Pinegrow, are just interested in kind of the entry level general overview, and then a couple folks are interested in the really nitty gritty. People like Taylor Drayson want the full scope of details. So we probably won't get too deep into that today. Really, the idea is going to be that we look at this from the perspective of, do we is this a tool that you might consider? I think probably for most of us, the FSC idea is probably it's, if you're not using it, it's coming. And then, does custom blocks make sense? So one question I wanted to start off with, Adam, is I, for months and months now, have been thinking about creating custom blocks specifically for client work, because I have a lot of clients who are reasonably technical. They're not WordPress experts, but they're certainly not, entry level folks. They're not Joe the plumber. They're a marketing director or somebody that has a little bit more, technical expertise. But even that with the block editor still leaves too much to chance. Whereas custom blocks allow me to give the client exactly what they need. But every time that I've loaded up like Block Studio, for instance, I am just like, oh man, it feels like I'm starting from scratch and I have to do literally everything by hand. So my question with all of that said is, what do you find is the reason why spending time building blocks in Pinegrow to be worthwhile?
You kind of hit the nail on the head there. When you look at those other products like Block Studio or ACF blocks or MetaBox blocks, or I think even, and I've got a few of them here in my notes that I've looked at. Genesis actually has one called Genesis Custom Blocks. Um, they're all code based. You've got to write some code, and you've got to like figure out what the HTML is going to be, and then translate that into something else. And that's a huge barrier for people like us who kind of think design first almost. And the thing that I like about Pinegrow is that it doesn't take that approach. It's a visual builder. So Pinegrow is actually a visual HTML and CSS builder at its core. Like that's what it was designed to do, was create, old school classic, HTML websites. And then, as it's grown, they've added on features to do things like, WordPress. They've got a WooCommerce plugin now. They even have a version of it now that does Vue. So it's a visual Vue IDE, which is super cool. It's something that I'm digging into and trying to learn, and that's been fun.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hurting
So
my brain a little bit. But yeah, so Pinegrow, first and foremost, is a visual website builder. It's not a WordPress tool. They've bolted on the WordPress stuff. So the neat thing is you actually design your blocks using HTML and CSS, and then you add WordPress actions on top of it. You say, okay, well, here's a placeholder, and I'll actually get in. We'll do a demo of this in a little bit.
yeah.
So you actually come in and you'll say, okay, well, I want this to be a field that someone can replace, or here's an image that I want someone to be able to replace from the media library. And you're doing the design first, you're adding actions to it, and then WordPress takes that and translates it into the React code that you need to generate the block. So it takes all that legwork out of the equation. It still gives you the same thing as if you were writing the block by hand. And you don't have to leave a Pinegrow plugin installed or anything like that. It like gives you the code that you just zip up and install it like a regular old block plugin. But it does it all visually. So it's super, super easy in that way.
That's really interesting. I'm going to keep referencing Block Studio because that's what I've spent the most time with, and also just talking with Taylor on a regular basis. We talk about Block Studio a lot. So yeah, the contrast there with Block Studio, as I'm sure you know, but just sharing with other folks, is you either have to build it totally separately outside of WordPress, or there's a code editor. And at the top, to kind of define the block settings, you have like the little JSON headers, just like simple lines of defining the name and what the block is capable of and those sorts of things. But then the reason why I kept stopping was, if I'm going to take the time to build a block, then it's not just going to be used for that one site. I'm going to want to use it across all of my clients, or many of my clients. And then with Block Studio specifically, you have to have the base Block Studio plugin, plus you have to have your own block plugin installed on top of that. So it started to feel like, oh man, there's just like it didn't feel like a smart way to go. Whereas Pinegrow seems a little bit more intentional, that it's not reliant on anything else, because under the hood, like you said, it's just HTML and CSS essentially.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy when you actually look at what it's doing behind the scenes. Mathias is going to kill me for saying this. It's dumb stupid. It's just wrapping your HTML in functions, and doing a one-for-one translation. So unlike a page builder that's got a lot of smarts under the hood and really tries to streamline that process for you, really tries to simplify and streamline it for you, Pinegrow doesn't try to do any of that. It just takes some of the legwork out of the things that you would do repetitive over and over again. Oh, there's Mathias. Great. I'm going to get a Zoom call or a message after this, knocking me down for saying that. But yeah, so it's brilliant in its simplicity, but it's also, complex because it doesn't try to hold your hand.
Okay. Yeah. So I mentioned, we have most of the people that responded to the surveys were interested in the lower level stuff. So I was going to feature a question here. Can we define custom block? So I think that's a really great question. I'm going to take a stab at it, and then I'll let you as well, Adam. So in my head, when I'm picturing custom block, it's a block that I've predefined with a certain set of capabilities. So let's say I have a hero section. I'm going to toss a hero block into my page, but then the only thing about it the client can change is exactly what I configure. So they can change the text of the headline, but not the styling or the size or the position. And then maybe the background image they can change. And let's say that's it. So that they really can only change the content and the content that we allow them to, and that's it. So would you concur? Do you have any other thoughts on
No,
that?
absolutely. And WordPress tries to do that a little bit with its patterns, but they kind of fall short. And so creating that custom block gives you exactly what you just talked about there. It lets you make the block that's got all the styling in it, all the actions in it that you need to have, and it's locked down. If you want to, we can go ahead and do a screen share, and I can just run through it with you because I've got some stuff set up here.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing, if you have questions in the meantime, pop that in the chat. We might not get to it right away, but we will definitely do our best to address all of them. Elijah is actively working on a Gutenberg block for PyCalendar. So this question may be uh, applicable to that. He says, "Does Pinegrow let you build SSR blocks?" What is SSR block? Do you know?
I don't know what an SSR block is.
He's smarter than us, so we'll just let him be for now.
He's
Would
way smarter than us. Yeah, and we've got Matthias here. He's the CEO, lead developer for Pinegrow, so maybe he can help unpack that one.
awesome. Let me
All right,
toss the
so
screen
we've
share
got
in
my
here.
screen. Cool. All right, so I've got a demo site set up here. I've got 2 demo sites actually, and let's go ahead and remove this.
Let's see, I'm
Goodbye.
trying to figure out which layout will be best. Probably this one. We'll have us on the side and then the screen share there.
You can just remove me completely. I'm bringing the whole thing down.
Likewise.
All right. So over here, I've created a custom block already, and it's just called PG Card Plugin. Because what it is, it's a block that is inside of a plugin. So just like you would come to the add new plugins here and find something like generate blocks or any other block type thing, Pinegrow creates a plugin to hold your block and define it. So I have created this thing. It's active. We can now use it on the site. I'm going to come over to the front page, and this is just a kind of a generic site using the 2023 theme. I've got some demo data loaded, just so we've got some placeholder stuff here. And here on the page, I'm going to come in and add that block. You see all the way down here, I've created a category that says My Pinegrow Blocks,
Awesome.
and I've got a biography card block that I've created. So if we take a look inside this block, it's huge right now. I can come in and I can say, just do a line left to make it a little bit smaller so it's not doing full width. And it's just what you said. It's got the styling defined. It's got all this stuff predefined. I can choose what is going to be, user replaceable here. So if I want to change this image, I can. Just grab something from the media library. I can
Awesome.
change the name if I want to, or job title. I can give it a link. Add in Facebook links that are, or the social media links that are down here.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, let me just get some dummy data. Inside there, I've created a inner block. So this is saying that I can add more Gutenberg content inside this block. But for right now, for this purpose, I'm just going to paste in some text.
Cool.
Update, and boom, now we've got a block inside this page. And there you have it. And it is formatted all sorts of weird.
Yeah, of course.
Because of the way. Let's do this. We'll just make it none. If I put it inside of a group block, it would work fine.
There we go. Easy peasy.
Yep. So we've got that block, and if I right click on it and do inspect, you'll see that it is pretty straightforward. It's just a div with some, a section for contents, section for the image, section for the stuff down there. So that's when I say custom block, that's what I mean. Make sense?
Awesome. Okay. So in this case, then you have this card. Let's say you have 45 of them across your site. Client comes to you and they say, "Hey, we actually want the social links up above the photo." And you say, "Easy. or you say, uh-oh?
Not a problem. Just come in, modify the block, resave it, and it updates all those blocks.
Okay. So it's kind of like I've been talking a little bit about components and Webflow components, essentially.
Really, that's when I think about blocks, that's kind of what I think they are, especially custom blocks, is they work like components. You build it one time, you style it once, and then it's just a matter of changing the content over and over again in the different places.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about one of my large projects right now. There's like probably 40 or 50 pages, but for the most part, there's like 6, maybe 8 unique sections across the entire site. So, there's some element of this where these custom blocks would be amazing for that reason. Yeah, perfect. I see where you're headed with this.
Yep. Boom. And boom.
So you got all 3 of them. So where do you actually change the structure of the block? How do you do that?
Cool. Well, before we get into that, I want to kind of dive in just so you can see what a block is underneath.
Sure.
Because as we're talking about this, I think it helps to have some context. Especially as we're gonna sort of gear the conversation towards FSE. Um, this might help a little bit. So I've got Visual Studio Code here, and the site that I just showed you, this is running on local on my machine. So I've got the website pulled up over here.
Okay.
And this PG card plugin, this is the folder that holds the plugin that had the card in it. Here's the PHP file that defines the plugin. And then inside here, we've got blocks and biocard. This is the code for my block. And it's got a PHP file that registers it and sets some properties.
Okay.
And then this JavaScript file is the thing that defines what the block looks like and the behavior of it. So, you probably saw a similar thing with Block Studio. And, some people will create their blocks using JSON. Pinegrow outputs it all into a JavaScript file. I'm sure Matyaj has a great reason for doing that. But when you really think about it, it's all the same. But really, who wants to go through and do all this stuff to create a freaking block? I know I don't.
This is where I look at it and I say, whoop, not for me. See you later.
It seriously hurts my brain. But I wanted to point this out because if you actually unpack one of these and start looking into it, you can sort of see what's happening. I'm defining the attributes. I'm defining some preset text and images in there, and then I'm all just bringing it together with JavaScript. Or if I do a different kind of block, I'm bringing it together with PHP, or I'm doing it with both if I go the hybrid block route. But I think just kind of showing you under the hood, at least a peek under the hood, is something that a lot of people don't bother to do, and for me, it helps set some context there.
So I would assume the vast majority of people that would be interested in this probably don't have much JavaScript experience. People, I would assume most people watching this would probably at least have a pretty good understanding of PHP, HTML, CSS. So are you up a creek if you don't have the JS experience, or have you acquired that knowledge yourself?
Oh, dude, if you knew how bad my JavaScript experience was, you would laugh.
Okay.
Really, unless you're adding your own JavaScript, you don't need to know it. And I just brought that out so that you could see what was happening under the hood. I do not expect anybody to ever go in and look at this stuff.
Okay.
I'm just a nerd, and I like looking at it because I like understanding what's happening under the hood. And because I talk about it, I want to be at least somewhat intelligent when I talk, or as intelligent as I come. So I do. I poke under the hood of this stuff just to see what's happening and try to reverse engineer it. But you don't need to touch any of this code. You don't need to do anything with it. As a matter of fact, it's probably better if you don't touch any of it.
Okay.
And do everything through the Pinegrow interface.
Well, I'm looking forward to the Pinegrow interface then.
However, that said, if you want to come in and monkey with it, it's just code. You do whatever you want. It's not there's nothing keeping you from adding or extending the code that Pinegrow has generated for you.
Okay.
All right. So let's actually go in and take a look at how we built that block. And here, Pinegrow's got a few different versions. They've got the desktop version. That's sort of their flagship that does everything under the sun. And it's all file-based. So it would write my project directly to my Windows desktop here, and then it would spit out a plugin into a directory that I'd need to either upload to my WordPress server, or I'd need to use a local site and have it looking at it. For this demo, though, I'm using the WordPress plugin version just because it's a little bit easier. I don't need to worry about that whole local development environment stuff.
Yep.
It still works just the same, and they're almost one-for-one feature parity, except for just a few tiny little things. But I've already loaded up the project because we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time building a block from scratch here. And I should also say, almost everything that we're doing here today can be done in the free version of the Pinegrow plugin. So you can go to pinegrow.com and download this thing. And the free version lets you do create blocks, with the only restriction, I believe, for blocks being that you can't do inner blocks.
Okay.
So you can do everything except for how I showed you. We did this text using an inner block.
Yeah.
Everything else you can do with the free version of Pinegrow. It's insane how much they're giving away in this plugin. So if you're at all curious about this thing, download it, give it a try.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to just fire up this project that I have here. And I'm going to just reload because I did something. There we go. And so this is the main Pinegrow interface. And it looks really intimidating right off the bat, but it's not. It is very similar to what you would get with any other page builder, only has a lot more stuff. You can reconfigure this interface, pretty much any way you want, dragging panels around, doing whatever. I'm going to simplify a couple things here because we don't need to see a lot of the things that we have shown. So I don't need to see interactions. That's going to be for making stuff move around and fly around the screen. I'm not going to be playing with the AI assistant, and I'm not going to be playing with the design panel. And I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of what we're looking at here. So we've got a tree view of the HTML, and I'm going to change this too. I like to see both my mobile view as well as a desktop view.
Oh, that's cool. Side by side is neat.
Exactly. Just because I end up changing one and inadvertently changing the other, so I tend to keep both up. But that makes it hard to see in a live stream. So I'm just going to. There we go. That should help make it a little bit easier to see. Good. All right. So over here on the left, we've got the HTML view, and this is just a view of your HTML tree structure. If I come over here, we've got the project. And if you were using the Pinegrow desktop program, you'd see all these on your file system. Because we're using the plugin, these are virtual files that are stored inside the database.
Okay.
We've got our preview window in the middle. And then on the side here, this is where we can see properties. So I'm going to grab a anchor here. So I can see properties for that anchor, classes that are applied, attributes, IDs, hrefs, all that stuff. I've got a style panel. This is where I can create rules and set HTML or CSS properties. And then my WordPress panel. And this is where I assign actions. So I've created these cards. Thank you, Kevin, by the way. I made this a while ago using one of your tutorials on how to create a card. I've just taken this first one and created a block from it. So if we take a look, I've got 3 of them in here, and 2 of them are just placeholders. This first one is the one that I used to create the block.
Is there like a way you're adding an element to the page, or does it not work like that?
Yeah, add elements. You can just come right in here to the insert button, and you can either drag and drop, or you can write short code. So similar to Emmet, you can put in something like div.
I don't know Emmet at all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
sorry, Elijah.
Or you can come in here and see a quick thing. So it's shorthand for writing out HTML code. So it's really, really nice. The other thing that I should point out is that you can open up a code editor window too. And this is actually the way that I typically work, is with this configuration. So whatever I've got here, I can see the HTML code down the bottom, and I can modify this HTML code.
And then that updates your visual preview as well?
Exactly, because
That's dope.
everything inside Pinegrow is stored as HTML and CSS. All the smarts are in here. It's not storing
Wow.
anything like a project database or anything. So it's
So
doing all this real time. Like I
really, no
said,
matter
Pinegrow at
if
its core
you're
is an HTML, CSS editor.
yeah. So no matter if you're somebody who struggles to write code by hand, or if you prefer to, this would work for you.
Exactly. If
Crazy.
you find that there are elements or CSS properties or anything like that that you want to add that are not here in the interface, no big deal. Just come on in and hit the code window and write it yourself.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of
That's
cool. I
really
can open
cool.
up my whole style sheet, browse through my style sheet, reorder this, do whatever the heck I want. It's not doing anything fancy behind the scenes.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So this would be the screen in which like I said just something stupid like the social icons above the image. Client wants some dumb request like that. You could theoretically do that right here, save, and everywhere that block exists, that change is made. Okay, so you export the plugin, that just goes and like sticks
that's
it.
actually going to go and rewrite the files.
Okay.
So it's now updated the files in my plugin.
Oh wow. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, when I do export. And then if I come back, because this is not a dynamic block, it's going to say attempt block recovery. If it was a different type of block, then it would have done it automatically behind the scenes. But yeah,
Okay.
boom.
There's some little toggle or something you need to set.
Exactly.
Okay,
So as a matter of
gotcha.
fact, I come into the block, and there's three different types of blocks. There is a general HTML block, or a regular JavaScript React block, and that's what we're using here. And this is just part of the way that blocks were created. In this case, if you change the structure of it, you've got to do that repair block.
Okay.
The nice part of it is that if I were to change that block and did not do the recovery, it would leave it the way that it is. And that might be something that we want to do in some cases.
Yeah.
Now, if I did dynamic PHP block, check this out. So I'm going to save this and export again. It changed my code again, a little bit different because now we've got JavaScript, but we also have this PHP.
Okay. Yep.
So now it's actually going to be using PHP to render this block instead of JavaScript. And let me show you what that looks like on the website side. Pages, front page.
You speak Greek?
So now I've got to attempt block recovery. No, this is all part of the demo data. It's got that Greek
Okay.
stuff in there. So same thing. It's going to look and behave the same way on this side.
Yeah.
But if I come back into Pinegrow and make a change, I don't have to do that block recovery to change it. It'll automatically update it.
Got it. Okay.
So the other thing is going to be ACF block, and I just want to show you this because I think it's like the coolest thing.
Yeah, I think this is
really
probably
not
going
huge
to
nerd.
this is going to tie into what MJSWP asked, which is, can you pull in content from a dynamic source like a CPT with custom fields?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. And you do not need to use a ACF block to do that. And I've got something going on with this site, and I apologize for that. That is like making it change. But let me come in here to my project. Let's reset my layout again. But yeah, so let's grab that block. This time I'm going to change the block type to ACF block. And all right, nothing up my sleeve. Wrong editor window, sorry. All right, PHP, JavaScript, all that good stuff.
Yep.
Let's check it out on when I do update. I thought I'd be good doing screen. I'm not.
The stuff doing it live is way harder.
It is so much harder. All right, so now I've exported the plugin, and this PHP file looks a whole lot different because now it's using the syntax for ACF blocks.
Yeah.
and it still works just the same. It's just an ACF block. So, if you are trying to do ACF blocks and you want a visual way to do it, boom, there you go. Use Pinegrow.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty sweet. Um, so yeah, a lot of this stuff you could use dynamic data for, and absolutely, basically anything over here. You've got a whole slew of actions from WordPress. Basically every function that you can think of that WordPress has built in, you've got an action for it over here. Most of them are going to be pretty raw, where it's just going to be adding the properties in there. But they do have a few smart functions that they don't really work as wizards, but they try to take a little bit of the tedium out of setting the properties for them. So yeah, dynamic data all day and night. And I use this all the time for doing loops, for pulling stuff from custom fields. In some of my themes, I'll even use this to create custom post types, because that's, one of the functions that's built into WordPress. You just need to know what parameters to throw at it.
That's super cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about the possibilities, shout out Kevin for the $10 super chat. He said, challenge, Gutenberg has no section block. Could you make one with Pinegrow that has inputs for styling, such as padding? I tried and ran into too many limitations. Is that out of scope? As Adam runs his fingers together in a menacing way.
I don't doubt that you could, but I'm going to show you something. Hopefully we'll have time to do this when we get into FSE. I think you might be happy to see some of the things you can do with theme.json. So there's actually some settings that you can set in theme.json that let you add padding and margin to blocks. And you can use that group block and do what I think you're talking about right there, just by putting a few lines of code in.
Sweet.
So yeah, once I started really monkeying with theme.json, that opened up a whole new world for me where it comes to FSE. And it's really a shame that WordPress, they've got this disjointed way of working. They build some things that work so easy and so well. And you've got the visual interface to change properties for all your blocks and do all that stuff. But then you've got to go into this JSON file to set properties or to tell it, like, I want to be able to set padding on something. I've got to set that through JSON. I can't do it through the interface for some reason. I want to change the size of my content width. I've got to do that through the JSON file. I don't have an interface to do it. I don't understand where they're coming from, and why they do some of this stuff super easy, and then other things that should be easy, they make ridiculously complex.
See, that's, I know you're talking about FSE and theme.json right now, but that's kind of the aha moment I'm having right here with Pinegrow, is I'm like, man, I don't want to be in the nitty gritty. Like the abstraction that's created with Pinegrow, to where somebody that understands HTML and CSS can come in there and plug away, almost like an Oxygen or a Bricks, but with a custom block. Like that's pretty amazing to me. And to be honest, like when I did my stream a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, even maybe it's 2 months ago now, but with Sunny taking a look at Quickly components, I've been like, man, those are really cool, but I don't want to do an entirely new builder. I'm happy with Generate and what it allows me to do, except that I want components. So now with this Pinegrow approach, you absolutely could do it, which I think kind of transitions us nicely. If you have any other questions in the chat about blocks, please do drop them in. But I want to tie this into how you could use this with any page builder, any block package, however you're building your site. This can work. And in your case, you're sometimes using FSE, right, versus Generate. Is that the case?
Yep.
And then what would be the the high level elevator pitch of FSE in this case?
At this point, the high level elevator pitch of FSE is, it's what WordPress wants you to use. So get on the bus, start learning it, and don't get left behind. There's still a lot of rough edges around FSE, but I haven't run into any serious limitations when I use it in conjunction with custom blocks. And maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm cheating the system a little bit. Because when I do FSE, I'm creating custom blocks for entire things. Like I'll create a custom block that has the whole header in there, and just pop that into a a header section. I'll create a custom block for the whole content area, because frankly, the stuff that WordPress has in core doesn't give me what I want.
Right.
For example, I can't come into WordPress core and use any of those blocks and set conditions. Why? Why can't I do that? I've got to add a plugin. And by the way, there's a great condition plugin out there, but why do I need to add a plugin to use conditions that are built into WordPress?
That's so hilarious, because that dude is a core contributor, and yet he had to write a plugin to make it happen.
It's a fantastic plugin. But seriously, why? I don't understand some of the stuff going on in their head, and I'm trying not to curse.
You totally can. This is a what's the opposite of a family show?
Oh, dude, you just opened up a can of worms, buddy.
Demonetize. Let's go.
Seriously. All right. But yes, so that's sort of what I'm doing, is I'm creating blocks that have entire sections. And I'm doing that here with Pinegrow, because I know those sections aren't going to change up very often. And if they do change often, I just come in and update the block. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
And now that Pinegrow does hybrid blocks, and hybrid blocks, don't need to be manually changed. We don't have to hit that little button that says refresh it, whatever. They kind of give you the best of both worlds in a lot of cases. So now they've got hybrid blocks that they can output. All I have to do is update the block plugin, and boom, it's changed everywhere. And my content's all still there. It's just the look and feel and layout of the block is updated. So why not? That kind of stuff's not changing. The stuff that is changing is the content. The stuff that is changing is, maybe I will be adding more blocks, but I'm generally not changing that core stuff that's already there.
Right, right. So the other thing about this custom block approach with Pinegrow, or really anything, I mean Pinegrow in particular, but a big advantage I'm seeing is that no matter if you are currently using Bricks or Generate or FSE, and you decide to switch to something else, you could conceivably change themes or page builders or whatever. All of your blocks from Pinegrow are completely unaffected and detached from that. So whatever your wrapper is, if it's Bricks or whatever, you're totally fine, and you're a lot more nimble, it seems like.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It can work with any builder that you're using. You can also just take this block and reuse it over and over again on different projects. So you can just create one block plugin that's got all your standard blocks that you use everywhere, and just install it wherever you want.
That's amazing.
Yeah. As long as when you're writing the CSS, just scope your CSS to that particular block. And maybe use some of the WordPress variables. So use the variables for your spacing, for your font sizing, for your colors, and it'll pick up on the stuff that's built into your theme.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're using ACSS or Core or your own framework or whatever, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Matter of fact, if you want to share a screen, I'm gonna show you something kind of cool.
Sure. Caroline asked what condition plugin you mentioned. I'm referring to block visibility in the WordPress repo. It's free. I don't know if you have a different one, Adam.
Let's see what I've got here. Conditional blocks.
Okay.
But yeah, block visibility is also super cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're sharing screen again. All right, so here we were looking at just a view of a canvas for me to build out the block. But this doesn't show me what this block is going to look like in the context of the web page. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people like about page builders, is that they can see what it's going to look like on their site.
Mm-hmm.
Here I'm not loading any CSS from WordPress. Like, this is all just what I tell Pinegrow to use. But if I want to see what it's going to look in the context of my site, come over here and I do right click and I say open in wrapper. I'm going to show you my wrapper settings. Here I set two things. The first time you do it, it's going to bring up this little dialog, and I give it a URL, and then I give it a CSS selector of where I want to inject the view. But now when I come in and say open as wrapper, it almost looks like what you would see in a page builder. I'm seeing that block in the context of the page. And
yeah, like your fonts are correct and everything.
Exactly. cool thing is I can come in here and let's just take this and take a look at my styles. Let's grab something that actually has a style on there. Icon wrapper. I don't want an icon wrapper. Grid item. Mm-hmm.
I screwed you up by putting your card footer in the middle of the card.
Yeah, thanks, dude. There we go. So yeah, so I've got variables in here, and these are variables that were set from my project. So if I take a look at my style.css, I've got this scoped to my block. I've got these variables scoped to my block.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to use a WordPress variable instead, just right click on this and say CSS variables. And look, I've got my WordPress variables right there.
Cool.
And now this is all the stuff that was set up in theme.json or inside, Gutenberg. So if I want to make that pink, there it is. Now it's using that WordPress variable of pink. And I can do the same thing with all my spacing, my typography, all that stuff.
Can it pick up like generate press? It's variables?
Anything that, throws a variable into WordPress, it's going to pick that up.
Cool. That's awesome.
Because all those variables are here on the page, when that page is rendered. And so Pinegrow is just looking at that page and trying to, figure out what variables exist on that page and then showing them to us here.
This CSS variables is working because you injected this into entry content?
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
So now it's looking at the page and all the styles that exist on this page. And when I right click on that, it's letting me pick from any of the variables that are defined.
So if you use bricks, you might have to use like a body class or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
But if I'm using automatic CSS, guess what? I've got all the variables that are there. If I'm using, any framework, I've got all those variables available to me.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. But yeah, I just thought that would be interesting for somebody here. Let's see. MJSWP asked if the main perk is that it cuts down on the bloat of page builders. Bloat's an interesting thing. Because you've got bloat that's on the code that gets rendered on the front end, but then you've got bloat on the back end, all the stuff that slows down the WordPress back end, that can create conflicts, that can break when you do upgrades. That's where I see this as being the most useful, because page builders, especially things like bricks, especially things like Oxygen, they output really nice, clean code. Unpopular opinion, but hell, even Elementor is getting better. Now that they've got Flexbox, it's still not good, but it's getting better. You look at Divi; they're doing some incredible stuff over there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the code that they output is much better than what we're seeing today. So the front end code is not as big a concern to me, and this spits out perfectly clean code as long as you write clean code. But the big concern to me is what's happening on the back end and what the potential is for breakage. Here, I don't need to worry about that because I'm not doing anything. I can go ahead and remove my Pinegrow plugin. Just deactivate. I can delete my Pinegrow plugin, and all I have left is the plugin that has my block, and it all would still work, except for the fact that I need to. Did I delete the wrong one? I have up something.
I know where you're going with this. It should have worked, but of course it's live, so it didn't work.
It should work. But we're doing a live demo, and that happens in live demos. I think I forgot to export it is my problem.
Does it have anything to do with the dynamic?
No. I've got this as an ACF block. That's what it is.
Oh yeah,
I don't have ACF loaded.
I figured you were talking about with the stuff that maybe it broke in that way.
Nope. I set it up as an ACF block, and I don't have ACF on there.
That makes sense.
This is what happens when you do a demo live, right?
You would have edited this out, and nobody would have been the wiser.
Exactly. Look, it's going to make an ass of me. But yeah,
there
so
we
now
go.
Pinegrow, I removed Pinegrow. My block still works. I can come in, I can use it, I can change the content. This is all buggered up because of me messing with the ACF stuff.
But you would have come into that post edit screen there, and it would have looked like it did in your Pinegrow interface, correct?
And you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just delete that. Go away. And now I'm going to re-export it.
Yeah.
So I deleted that. It's deleted the whole directory from my WordPress install. And now I'm just going to re-export that.
Okay, cool.
And I've completely jacked up my page though, because I've completely just jacked up my page from
No worries.
all the monkeying around that we've done.
The way that it should work is it still
In
just
a perfect
exists.
world,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. It looks like that.
exactly.
Definitely. That's cool.
Yeah, never trust a live demo. Never trust anything to survive a live demo.
So with
Sorry.
this, I was
Let's talk
gonna
FSE.
yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna quickly add to the idea of cutting down on bloated page builders. I actually don't think that this really impacts that positively or negatively because of the fact that we talked about you can use anything you want. So if there's some aspect of bricks or oxygen or generate that you like, you can use that piece of it and still take advantage of these blocks because both of them together are not going to impact your site. Really, the only way that it's going to be positive or negative is if you are doing something like, to screw up the page speed, because you can build it however you want. So I don't really think that that's actually an important consideration in this topic.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. You can use your page builder and show the content of a page. You can build the page contents using the block editor and show that using almost any page builder these days. So even if you're using Elementor or Beaver Builder or Bricks or Oxygen, you can still use that to define the theme and the style of the page, and then do the content inside of Gutenberg and supplement it with custom blocks like this.
Before we jump to FSE, I apologize, Facebook user. For some reason, we don't get to see your name unless you authenticate with StreamYard. But they ask, compared to Oxygen and Bricks, what's the learning curve for Pinegrow?
Um, it's going to be more difficult than either of those because you've got to understand what's happening inside WordPress. From an interface perspective, it's not that much more difficult. You just need to
Seems
figure
really
out
similar.
where things are. But you need to understand what the functions are to do things inside WordPress, because you're not getting all the helpers. You're not getting the wizards and things like that you get inside of a Bricks or a Oxygen. One of the most difficult things about doing any theme is creating a menu.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, like, don't even get me started on menus. And that's one of those places where a lot of these page builders have spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to build a menu, and trying to build helpers and wizards that take care of those more complex components. Pinegrow doesn't try to do any of that. Pinegrow is more focused on, you build out the stuff that you want to build out. They take care of, giving you the tools to do it.
So you could use Bricks and its menu, and then all your content could be custom blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, man, that menus would be really tough.
It took me a while to build one. I ended up landing on something that I took inspiration from Tailwind menu. Tailwind UI's got a menu out there, and I took inspiration from that and stripped out the Tailwind stuff, put in custom CSS, and it works. But yeah, it's not easy to do.
Cool. Well, let's transition to FSE, full site editing. Kind of talk about how you're using it and maybe its advantages, disadvantages, and then hopefully that'll generate some questions as well.
Cool. Yeah. So FSE, this is one of those things that is a concept. And I think most of us talk about FSE and we use it as a synonym for the block themes, but it's really not. So FSE encapsulates the site editor, that weird new interface that's inside of WordPress. So it encapsulates that. It includes template editing, so modifying your index template, your page template, your post template. It encapsulates all the stuff that happens within your block themes. It encapsulates the styling, the theme.json, all those things. All that stuff they put under this umbrella called full site editing. And then they add a few more bullet points here that seem to be redundant, and I don't know why, other than, WordPress being WordPress. But when we talk about FSE, it's all this stuff. Navigation block and query block, who cares? I don't know. It's the site editor. It is theme.json. It is template editing, and it's block themes. So I think about it in terms of those pieces. So that's kind of what this is at its core. I'm going to point you at a really cool website here. And maybe we can update the description of this with some resources. I've got a whole list of resources that we can give to people. But this site right here, fullsiteediting.com, is amazing. So, just browsing through this, they've got great articles. It's all easy to read, easy to understand. If you're at all interested in full site editing, give this a look. I've just found this to be an invaluable resource.
Awesome.
So again, coming back to code, this begs the question of what is a theme. And if we take a look at a classic theme, this is a classic theme, a classic starter theme called Underscores. Are you familiar with Underscores at all?
No.
It's a bare bones theme. Automatic created it. Starter theme.
Okay.
You can give it a name and it generates some code for you. It's ugly. It doesn't have any styling in there. It doesn't have anything in there, but it's got functions, and it's got the stuff that you would need to get started building a theme. So what a theme really is comprised of are templates that define things like your pages, your posts. It's got styling in there for your CSS in here. You've got your functions.php, and this is going to be tell it how the theme behaves and anything that needs to happen to make things look and behave the way that you want to look. And then you've got partials, which are like small template files that you can inject into other bigger template files.
Okay.
That's really what a theme is at its core. So you're defining all these different templates, all these different styles, and wrapping them up into what's called a theme. In a classic theme world, you did this with PHP files, CSS, and if you had frameworks or anything like that, you would add them in with JavaScript or whatever that framework needed. But in the FSE world, you're doing that primarily in the browser instead of on the file system. And I say primarily in the browser because you're still doing part of it on the file system because WordPress. And this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. So I'm going to come back to this site that I created here because we're going to start and we're going to just create a FSE theme from scratch so that you can see what the heck this is.
Sweet.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So let's do this. If I can find the right code window again. WP content themes. All right, cool. So here in my themes folder, I'm going to create a new theme. And I'm going to call it Awesome Blocks. So I'm just going to do a new folder called Awesome Blocks. And inside of Awesome Blocks, I'm going to do file.css. And inside there, we're just going to put a header. And that just defines the theme name, author, all that stuff that you see when you create a theme. Save that. And I need one other file to make this into a theme. So in here, I need another folder. Templates. And in there, I'm going to create a blank index.html. That's all you need to define a theme is just a style.css and an index.html. When I come over here and refresh, I now see my awesome theme.
Yep.
So I'm going to activate that. Boom. Empty template, right? Because we're not doing anything. But now when I come over to edit site, I can start modifying that template to actually do something. So the other thing that I want to point out here is the template hierarchy. And this is in the Theme Developer Handbook. You can just Google WordPress template hierarchy, because this is what's going to show us what files, what templates handle what kind of pages.
Okay.
This looks super complicated. It's really not that bad. And when you're building a theme, like this is your Bible, and it would really help if I zoomed out to the correct proportion. There we go. So I created that index, and here you'll see that everything's PHP because this is built, this is based on classic themes. in the new FSE block theme world, all your theme files are HTML instead.
Okay.
But the names are all the same. So you always need that index.html, that index template file. That's your catch-all. And generally speaking, that's going to be the thing that you see on your blog index page. It can also be, what you would see on your search results page or archive pages as well, depending on how you structure this. But that's the file that you absolutely need. So I will generally do that file, and then I'll create one for pages, and that would handle my regular page template. If I wanted to make one for a separate template for my front page, I could do that as well. And then I'll create a single .html or PHP to handle my single post.
Okay.
So those are going to be the core ones that you want to see. You'll generally want to create a template for your 404 page not found page. Sometimes you want a different one for your search results page. And right there, this is basically what's going to instruct you on what templates need to be created. You can go from really broad to really narrow and create templates for all sorts of things. If you've got a template that you want for a specific taxonomy or a specific category, you can look up how you would name those things just by using this hierarchy thing. So I wanted to point this out because unless you built a theme, you don't know this.
Yeah.
If you've used a page builder, it will generally have this stuff written out for you. Like if you go inside of Elementor, they just say, page template, boom, really simple. But understanding this is the core to understanding how a theme works. I know we're totally going to run over time. I hope you don't mind.
Sure, I'm good.
But
nobody else minds.
Yeah, we're going to really quickly run through creating a theme, and then I'm going to show you one that I've already pre-created.
Cool.
So I've got my index template that I made there, and that's got nothing in it. I come in here and say edit, and now I can start adding stuff. So if I want to, I'm in the front page template. I don't want my front page. I want my index template. Edit. There we go. Blocks and media. And why am I not seeing my blocks?
Because it's live, of course.
That is 100% why. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Patterns. Cool. So I'm just going to grab some pre-created patterns. Do one for header, because I don't feel like doing this all from scratch right now. I'll grab a pattern for footer. I'll add that one. And if we take a look, we'll see that we've got basically groups here. It's already got that. I can expand this, and you'll see it's a row inside there, and we've got site logo, yada, 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 all that stuff. That's great for my header and footer. I'm just going to grab another group block. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to grab another pattern this time because this is my index template. So I'm going to grab something from my posts. And I'm going to pop that inside of a group.
Good old drag and drop.
See, it's not that terrible.
Not terrible.
And we got something.
Yep.
Something. It's not really great, but it's something.
Better than nothing.
Exactly. Let's take a look at that query loop. Looking at this is great. I've got my header here. I've got my footer there. But these right now are going to be only existing on this template.
Yeah.
If I want to make it general that I can reference anywhere, I can just not right click, but I can go in here and I can say create template part.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And here's where I could define a header and a footer that I can start referencing anywhere.
Gotcha.
A lot of times you're going to create a lot of different template parts for anything that's going to be reusable. You would just create a template part for it and reference it over and over again. So now I've got a header, footer, and a content area of this thing. And again, the styling's all off because we've done like nothing to this.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see something that works. I can come in here to templates and say add new, and I can add a template that covers my pages. So I've got one for my index right now, and I want one that's just going to work for all pages.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, base it off of the other one. It's already added that stuff in there. And instead of my query loop inside that group. I'm going to delete that. Yes, I'm positive. And I'm going to add a block for content.
Yeah, okay, got it. So this is essentially the same idea as building a template in Bricks or Oxygen.
Yep, only uglier. Yep. So it's really not that much different. You just need to understand the way that WordPress works. But the concepts are really very similar.
Yeah.
The problem is, again, we're limited by the blocks that WordPress gives us, right? And again, that's where custom blocks come into play.
Yeah.
Because without using more plugins, I can't do things like conditions. The styling of these things is garbage at this point. It isn't until I start getting in and adding a theme.json that I'm able to even define custom colors and do things like padding and margins. So I know Kevin had mentioned that he wanted to see some of that theme.json magic. Here, I'll just pop it open for you.
Now, to be clear, this goes back to what you said at the beginning of the stream about how it's disconnected. Like you have to do some stuff in the code editor and some stuff on the front end.
It really is, yeah.
Okay.
So if we look at it, went here to the editor. WordPress built this really cool style book thing. When we look at styles, we can see what our different blocks are going to look like using the block editor. We can define typography for stuff. We can define colors for things. We can define layouts. If I want to, I can even come in and I can change the properties for a default block.
Okay.
And it's going to save all this in that theme.json file. But I can't say that I want to allow people to use fluid typography or add padding and margin to blocks. I can't do that here through the UI, and I don't know why. I can't set my default page width through the UI. Why? Who knows? It's just silly that you've got to do some of this stuff manually and other stuff you can do through the interface. But let me go ahead and open up a theme.json file. I'm going to find...
While you're doing that, I laughed out loud at the Bad Cat Designs comments. The upside of building a custom theme is that you can add every single thing you need. The downside is you have to add every single thing you need.
That is totally it. But the cool thing is, like, once you get it and once you have a starter theme that you've created, you're done, and you just keep using that over and over again until you get tired of it.
Okay. I mean, yeah. That
and
alone
that's sort of what Underscores
attractive.
is all about. It's a starter theme. It's got a lot of that stuff, pre-made for you. You don't need to think about it anymore.
Which theme? Sorry.
The Underscores theme that I showed you.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. So here is my no-code theme of FSE. If I look at the theme.json, so this is a file that lets me define all sorts of stuff. So I've defined color palettes in here. That's pretty sweet. And then I've defined the other stuff that I can do with colors. So I've got, if I don't want to allow people to use the default color palette, I can set that to false. If I want to, not allow gradients, I can do that here. If I want to preset gradients, I can do that here. If I want to remove duotone, I do that right here through the JSON file. Lots of cool stuff. Typography. I can set my typography, my font families, the names, the slugs, all that stuff. And actually in the next version of WordPress, they're going to have the ability to bring in Google fonts and host them locally. So this should get even easier, at least defining the fonts. But here, now I'm able to say, I want to enable controls for things like line height, drop cap, font weight, font style. These are things that we just don't see by default. Fluid typography. We don't see these by default inside Gutenberg unless you have a theme.json. Why? And there's no interface to set these. I don't know why.
This stuff exists, but it just doesn't show up.
Exactly.
That's so stupid.
Yes, it is. So I can set my default font sizes. You know how you've got those little sliders that you slide back and forth to, small, medium, large?
Yeah.
Boom. I can set those presets right here inside theme.json. But you know what? I need to know how to write this because reasons. It's silly.
That is very silly.
But it's also cool because, I can set it so that I can use fluid typography if I want. And guess what? Now I'm able to set the setting for fluid so that I've got a fallback size of 1.125 rem, and I've got my min and max fluid typography. Like once you know where it is, it's not hard. My content size
WordPress.
and my wide size right there. It's in theme.json, but you got to know how to do it. Spacing, I can choose which units to use and display. If I want to add ch, boom, I just add ch.
Kevin asked, can you drop variables into those?
You cannot drop variables in.
That's why it looks so hard coded. Because I was surprised that you had like hex values for colors, but
this is actually going to create those variables for you.
okay.
So I think some of these things you can, if you go to fullsiteediting.com, they've got an entire reference on theme.json. And some of these will accept variables. Typography doesn't. But I think you can reference with some of the color stuff. Actually, no, it's where you're using blocks. When you're defining your blocks, you would reference your color variables and your spacing variables and things like that. You can't use them when you're defining them because reasons, again. But here we go. So spacing sizes, this is where I'm setting my default spacing. Border, this is saying I want to allow people to set border color, radius, style, width. This is just saying I want to enable those controls. So with these things enabled, here is a theme. I can come in and I now have a lot more control over what I can do with my typography. So I can set my letter casing. I can set my appearance. I can set, these sizes are all based on that theme.json file. Dimensions, here we go. I can now add padding. I can now add margin to things because I've told theme.json that I want to allow it. I can say, only change the top padding.
I'm just like, /sci. This shit exists. And it's not, that's all I can say. Yep. /sci. That's crazy, man. So
if you don't know it's there, you never see it.
Democratized publishing, right?
Why? Yeah. and like, they're trying to make this easier. They're just trying to make it easier for content editors. But at the same time, unless you're a developer, you're not digging into this stuff. Most of us that are, I say just designers, but most of us that are designers and that are using page builders and things like that, we're not going to be digging into the code.
No.
We don't have a need to. Then they give us this tool called FSE that's supposed to do everything here inside the browser visually, but yet we still need to dive into the code to do common sense stuff like enabling padding and margin.
Gosh, that's crazy. It's really
yeah. So that's that.
Okay.
And this is actually a demo that I did. I have a course out there that I created with Pinegrow on how to build themes. And then at the very end of it, after I created the classic theme, I turned it into a FSE theme.
Okay.
And we'll drop a link in at some point. I'm not here to pitch my course.
Where can people find it?
It needs to be recreated.
AdamLowe.io.
Yeah, AdamLowe.io. It's a site that I put together in an hour, and I've been procrastinating updating it for like the last 6 months.
But the content's good because it sells well.
It does sell well. But yeah, so here, if we take a look at it, I've got my templates, and let's just edit one of these templates so that we can see what it looks like on the inside. Because here I've made heavy use of custom blocks. This whole header, it's a custom block. This whole footer, it's a custom block with a content area. Even my inner contents are custom blocks. I'm defining the structure of it here with FSE.
Yeah.
But the content is all custom blocks. And to make those, you need to do, once again, Pinegrow.
Back in Pinegrow, okay.
Oh, look, I've lost my window. There we go. So here, this is the desktop version of Pinegrow now that we're looking at. Okay. And you'll see it looks almost identical to the other one.
I wouldn't even have realized had you not said that.
Exactly. It's really cool how they've made this so similar. But here, I've defined the layout and I've just created a block. Like here, I've got a block for my header. And Inside that header is all the structure and all the smarts to handle that. Someone was asking about dynamic data, and this is where I'm doing that. So I'm setting my site link and my logo dynamically, just using these WordPress actions. And there's actually no properties for some of these things, like site link. I want to link to home. Okay, but site logo, that's just nothing to set there. Menu. So I'm actually doing this as a hybrid theme. I'm defining a menu the classic way because menus in full site editing suck.
Yeah.
And I don't see them getting any better anytime soon. But I'm defining a menu, and I've made this a hybrid theme. And so I'm saying, use the primary menu, and doing it that way. For the content area here, I've created this as a block because I wanted to modify the way that the titles work. So I've got, if it's not a search result, I want to use one function for the title. Use the functions called the archive title.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is a search, then I want to say search results for my search term.
Right. Okay.
So I'm showing different titles depending on where this is being used. And then down here, I've got my article card, and I've got this as a loop somewhere. I've got my article card, article title. Oh, there it is. There's my loop defined. And so this has got my main loop. Again, not setting anything fancy because it's just using the WordPress loop functions. And I'm saying, use this list item and repeat it over and over again for the loop.
Okay.
And then for each thing, I'm just defining okay, I want my title to be there. I want my excerpt to go there. If it's got a thumbnail, show that. Let's see. I'm saying, if it does not have a thumbnail, then show, a default image. If it does have a thumbnail, show the thumbnail. So I've just defined a custom block that does all that for me and gives me my post grid, so that when we look at it on the front end, I don't know why I bother doing live demos because it's always going to go wrong. But when we look at it from the front end, it looks like this.
Okay. Yep. I see.
My header. I've got my articles. I can click in any of these, and it's showing me the content.
Cool.
I even created some custom blocks for, like these bio cards are custom blocks. And then I created a custom post type for the employees here. So there's a lot that can be done with FSE.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're using custom blocks, the limits, there's not as many limits as you would have, if you were trying to do everything inside of Core. If you're using WooCommerce, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more limitations. I'm not a WooCommerce person. Anytime I see WooCommerce, I either go running for the hills or I do Shopify or Ecwid. So I don't know much about WooCommerce. Sorry.
Yeah. Caroline asks,
there's going to be limitations there. But for your general sites, even stuff that's going to require, heavy custom programming, use FSE for the structure of it. And then custom blocks for all the smarts.
In the context of the menu, Caroline asks, is it possible to use short codes like Max Mega Menu?
Absolutely. Yep.
Cool.
And then for short codes, it's actually just a function that you would use to say, use this short code. So there's not something in Pinegrow that says, add a short code. It's a very simple function that you just write that you put your short code in there and it works.
Yeah, definitely. So if you have questions about what we've covered so far, please drop them in the chat. I want to kind of query you on when I look at specifically the idea of theme creation and going through the trouble of making a full site editing theme. As of right now, I don't see the advantage personally, as opposed to just using a GeneratePress or a Bricks as my theme. So are you like you said earlier, kind of on the early adoption train? Are you on board the bus, just sort of preempting your learning for the future? Or is there something that we haven't, that you discovered that we haven't kind of talked about yet? As to the advantages.
As for the advantage is that I'm not locked into using someone else's product.
Okay.
So they're not making a change that's going to break what I've done. That's part of it. I look in the threads at, okay, well, Bricks just came out with a new version that's got breaking changes that's, messed up everyone's site. Like that's not something you get when you build your own theme. If something breaks, it's probably because of something you screwed up.
Okay. Yep.
So there's that. Same thing with Generate Press, and Generate Press and Generate Blocks, I think, is fantastic. I don't know whether Generate Blocks work with FSE themes. I would suspect they would. But I mean, Generate Press is just a rock solid theme. Tom does such a good job of testing everything and making sure that it stays solid. So like that's probably what I would be using if I wasn't making my own custom themes.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a good system. It all works. So the advantage here really is that it gives me full control over what's happening. And again, I've got some stuff that requires, custom programming. I've got some stuff that has, just a ridiculous amount of traffic that I don't want anything loading that shouldn't be loading, because it's just going to pound away at my database.
Yeah.
When you start talking about sites that are getting, 1-2 million unique visitors a month, the things that you're thinking about are a little bit different. And I've actually got a handful of them now. It's bonkers.
That's amazing.
Where we're just doing crazy stuff with loads of data. So maybe my use case is a little bit different, but even so, like I'm now using, custom themes for all my clients, even if it's the simplest brochure site. Why? Because I figured it out. I've got my starter theme set, and it doesn't take me any more time to do it than anything else. I can manage it in one place and we're off to the races.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can definitely see the advantages if you are building a set of sites that are typically fairly consistent in size and scope. I guess even because of the flexibility, even if you had one that was more or less complex than you're typically after, you could definitely do that. From my perspective, when I look at this, it's like my day to day is typically building some, some reasonably complex sites, typically some sort of membership portal that has, gated access and login pages and stuff like that, checking ACF user fields and things of that nature. So, when I look at what would be highly advantageous, the Pinegrow, based on what we've seen today, is incredibly exciting, and FSE feels like something I'm going to wait a fair bit longer to see how it evolves. The disconnect between theme.json and the front end is exactly what I felt with Block Studio versus just building something in Generate Blocks. It's like it's almost there, but it's too frustrating and too kind of nitpicky to make it worthwhile in a reasonable workflow with real client projects where there's deadlines and
Yeah. If you're up for it, I'm going to show one more quick thing because I think people are going to like this.
Sure.
On that full site editing website, they've got a block theme generator. So just like that underscores thing had, it would generate a theme for you. Here, you put in a couple things, your name. This will create the header for you. Tell it some base colors and set some properties for you, and it's going to spit out a theme that is a good starting point, and it doesn't actually suck. Matter of fact, I will pop open one of those advanced, and we now have a theme that was generated for us.
Okay.
And here's the cool thing is now that we've got that theme, we can come in and modify pretty much anything we want. So right now it's kind of got that dark color thing going on. But if I want to, I can come in and I can say I want my background to be white and I want my text to be black instead. Save, view site, and there we go. So it's not terrible. And a lot of that stuff that we did manually in the beginning, it takes care of for you. Just like underscores has a lot of the functions pre-built for you and a lot of the styles and things already preset. This does that same thing. It's got some common sense defaults and it's a good starting area. I think this theme that the advanced one here even has stuff in here for WooCommerce. Yeah, totally has WooCommerce stuff built in.
Okay. Yep.
So it actually isn't that complicated. And then if you come back to their site again, the documentation's here for doing theme.json, and like you just look it up and you kind of scroll through and You find whatever you want to set, and boom, you just add it to the file if you want to.
Okay. Gotcha.
Um, other thing that I think people need to know about, and I did a terrible job of pointing this out, is once you've done this, like once you've got all this stuff set up, the question is, how do you pick it up and move it to another site, right? Because you've got some stuff that's in the file now, but then some properties and things that I've set that only live in the database. That's a big problem. And this is part of what I hate about full site editing is that, again, you're disjointed. Some of it's in the WordPress database, some of it's in the file system. I don't know what's where. When you're done, you come out here and you can say export. This is going to export a complete theme file with
Okay.
everything baked in. So all the settings that you just made baked in, all the styles baked in. Your theme.json is now going to have not only what you had in the original file, but also the properties that you set here in the full site editor is going to be here in your theme.json.
Gotcha.
So this is a good way to bring it all back together, and you can take this and re-upload it to your theme and say this is now the source of truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So this could be one that you dial in and use as the baseline for everything.
Exactly. Is it still more complex than using a bricks or generate press? Hell yes. But it's not awful once you understand the inner things.
Yeah.
The other thing, someone asked me about how I would go about doing JavaScript in here. Real simple, super simple. Whether you're using a block or a theme, you just come into the properties. So this is the properties of the block. And here, I just tell it which script I want to include. And then I add the files in there.
Oh,
So
I see.
then it's going to export the file, the JavaScript file, and tell the block to load it. And the nice
We've
thing about
asked,
block is that it only loads the JavaScripts and it only loads the CSS on the pages where you're using the block.
yeah, that's really nice.
So,
And for the most part, like you could get away with a reasonably complex site with no JavaScript. Like I mean, unless you're doing something crazy or like a slider, I guess, there are cases like that.
slider or there's a lot of little stuff. Actually, you know what? Come to think of it, you need JavaScript for almost any site because of headers, because of menus. You need
Well, yeah,
some sort of
yeah.
interaction there.
That's what, for me,
So,
I'm looking at this, not considering that because I'm like, I'm just going to use generate press and build my own custom blocks with Pinegrow.
exactly. But yeah, for your normal blocks, you don't need them. You don't need to worry about it.
So with this, I feel like I have a pretty good, handle on these two things. Are there, if you're still watching and there's other questions that you have that we haven't covered, please do drop those in. Kareem says, what about FSE hooks? How does that work? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I'm not sure either.
FSE, like, are you talking about WordPress hooks in FSE? Maybe you can clarify for us. MJSWP says, WP has their work cut out for them to encapsulate all of this for the typical designer. And it's really interesting because, a big message at WordCamp US was WordPress is for everybody. And Adam has a really great video that he just published a couple days ago, talking about exactly this idea that, that just the cliche of if it's for everybody, it's for nobody. And man, this is, even for somebody that's used WordPress for coming on 10 years, the idea of using FSE right now, I'm just like, I don't think it's for me. So it's an uphill battle. And
But here's the cool thing. I'm going to say this right now. It might not be for you as a designer or developer, but for for our clients, they like it because they can come in and you've done the heavy lifting by creating that FSE theme, but now they want to tweak one of those templates. They can do it visually. They don't need to get their designer involved to do it. That's the benefit of it. If they need to tweak a page template, they can do that really easily, which is something they never had the ability to do before. So it really benefits the content editor or the website owner. Doesn't do anything to benefit us. It makes our life a little bit harder, if anything.
yeah, yeah. And that seems to be more applicable in larger organizations where, like I said, you have somebody that's reasonably technical because Joe the plumber is going to either never log in or he shouldn't be in the site.
I would love to hear MJ SWP. Please, please disagree with me because I'm usually wrong. But yeah, I would love to hear your opinion. You know, what might be hard for me, you know, is easy for somebody else,
Mhm.
and you know, we all have different experiences. So
Yeah.
please pop your opinion in there. I'd love to hear it.
So Kareem says yes to the topic of hooks like generate press theme hooks. So I don't think that would behave in the same way because generate press works in such a specific way that you can inject things in certain places. But with these template parts, you could put anything anywhere, like a bricks or an oxygen, right?
Exactly. And that's
Okay.
sort of the point of those hooks inside Generate Press, is to give you the ability to inject your content. So FSE does not work that way. If you want to put hooks in, that would be something that you would custom code. You would just drop it in your functions.php file, or something else that you've another PHP file that you've enqueued.
Yeah, yeah, because like generate press, you don't load a main template and stick a archive title at the top. You'd have to use the hook for that. Whereas FSC, you could just slap that title right in.
Exactly. Yeah, it
Gotcha.
takes a lot of the need for those hooks out of it.
Okay. Interesting. Well, man, this has been really, really great.
Hurts your
So,
brain, huh?
what'd you say?
Hurts your brain.
Well, what hurts my brain is the fact that FSE has so many of those things under the hood. Theme.json specifically has so many of the controls under the hood that you just scratch your head like, why does the core block not have padding and margin controls? And yet it's there. It's just not a part of the core. What? Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
WordPress politics, man. That's what it is. You got hundred tons of people working on different components, not talking to each other, and then I don't remember what it was. Somebody the renaming the block in the little browser window on the side there. Like, why has it been 2 years and they're finally getting around to doing this? Because of politics. Because people design by committee. And that's what
Yeah.
WordPress is. It's designed by committee. Some stuff gets pushed through because of personalities. Other stuff stagnates because of reasons. And it makes no sense. You don't see this in commercial software because they've got strong leadership that's pushing, a single vision. Whether you like it or not, they're pushing that vision. And WordPress, the committee is the strength and the weakness.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Uh, so Adam, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? You have your website. I dropped that in chat earlier, adamlowe.io. What else?
Really everything there in adamlowe.io. That's got links to just about everything that you need. I'm on Facebook, so please feel free to connect with me there. It's got a link to my YouTube channel, so I would love it if
Oh
you
yeah,
subscribed there. And yeah, you can just reach out to me any way that you can find me. Right there on adamlowe.io has got all my contact information. Just don't come knocking
beautiful.
on my house unless you have coffee.
I was glad to see both of us came prepared today. Well, man, I really appreciate your time. Absolute pleasure. I feel like I have a really good handle on this stuff thanks to you, and I'm sure many, many other people will as well. So, like we said, make sure to go follow Adam on YouTube, and you're a commoner in the admin bar Facebook group. So, if you're not
Yep.
already there, join that as well. Adam,
Uh,
thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future.
cool. Thanks, Jonathan.